Hello guys, so in this video we're going to set up HAPROXY Ingress on AWS Kubernetes cluster. So in the first couple of minutes of the video we'll understand the basics of what Kubernetes Ingress is, and then we'll do the setup. So let's take an example that we have 3 pods which are running in a cluster, and now we want to send traffic to it. In order to send a traffic to it, the simplest that we could do is set up a service which is of the type cluster IP. So whatever traffic this cluster IP service gets, it's going to forward to these 3 pods. But the cluster IP service can only listen to traffic that is coming within the cluster, right? So if you want the external traffic to come to these pods, so we need to either set up a node port service, right? But the disadvantage of the node port service is that it always runs just on one node. But like we want to be able to map the pods from all the nodes, right? So a good way to do that is use a load balancer service, right? So if we set up a load balancer service, so suppose our site is foo.jomo.click, that's what we'll set up in the actual example also. And assuming in the route 53 we set up this rule that whatever traffic comes to foo.jomo.click, it should go to the load balancer which is set up, and the load balancer would forward the traffic to all of these 3 pods, right? So this is how we could do it through load balancer. But suppose we want to set up another application which is bar.jomo.click, right? So in that case, in route 53 we'll add another record which will send the traffic to another load balancer, and then that could send the traffic to the pods. But the disadvantage of like putting this configuration is that your configuration lives like these routes and all, right? The mappings, this lives outside the cluster, right? So Kubernetes does not know. And if you want to tomorrow migrate from AWS to some other cloud provider, so you have to rewrite this configuration. So we want to use the standard way, like where the configuration could live within the Kubernetes itself. So the best way to doing that would be using an ingress. So in the ingress, you declare some of the rules that how exactly the traffic should be routed. So the way it would work is like your route 53, it would send the traffic to a standard load balancer. The load balancer would send it to Ingress service, and Ingress service would then forward it to the cluster IPs based on the host mapping, right? Whether it's foo.jomo.click or bar.jomo.click. So we could configure Ingress configurations using hosts or paths, or both hosts and paths. And there are a lot of other configurations that are also available. So we want like whatever traffic comes to foo.jomo.click, that goes to the left side, which is served by these pods, and whatever comes to bar.jomo.click, it goes to the right side and it is served by another set of pods. So how exactly this happens, like because how exactly Ingress service forwarded to the respective cluster IP services is by using the Ingress controller. So Ingress controller is another like sort of a pod and application which runs within your cluster. So it consumes, like, so it listens on to a file which is ingress, right, which is of the type ingress resource. So it listens onto it. Once it finds it, it would process that information. So your ingress service would send the traffic to the ingress controller, and ingress controller, based on what is declared in the YAML file, which is the ingress YAML file, it's going to forward it to the respective cluster IP services and all. So we'll see this example right now. If you're liking my video so far, please hit the subscribe button and also like my video. And in the comments below, whatever feedback you have, please let me know that how can I improve upon these videos so it could be helpful for others. So here is our code, like which is our application. So our application is a Node.js application. All it's doing is like it would just like print, like means send a response for the URL, which is node app. It would say hello world, and then it prints the counter, like what's the counter is, and this is the host name, which is the pod name, and then it says from the app, so it reads the app name from the environment variable. So, and this is our, so we would create a Docker container out of it. So the Docker container's name is Robin Nagpal Kubernetes tutorial 003 node app. So this is the container, and we pass this environment variable which was app name, which is foo, right? So this is here. So we set up the first application which would be having like 4 replicas, and we'll send traffic to it using cluster IP, and the name of the service is foo app service, and it listens to port 3000, and this is the service port, and the target port is also 3000. So similarly, we set up another application which is of bar. So the app name here is a bar, and then again, like it would print that it comes from the app, like the response would be coming from the bar app, right? And it's exactly same, it uses the same container, right, the same application, and the service, if we see, it's bar app service, and it listens to port 3000, and target port is also 3000. And now we have the ingress. So ingress, we say all the requests that comes to foo.jomo.click, they should go to foo app service, and whatever request comes to bar.jomo.click, they should go to the bar app service. So as I explained, this file would be processed by the Ingress controller. So we'll deploy HAPROXY to the Ingress controller. So these are all the stuff that you need to install, and I'll send a link in the description below, so that you could just copy and set up all of these things. Few important things to note down is, first is the service which we have. So we declare the service, which is the Ingress service. So this service is going to create a load balancer, right? So if you see here, we add some annotations which will create a load balancer, which is a network load balancer on AWS, and then we say that add the DNS entries, which is foo.jomo.click and bar.jomo.click on Route 53 for this load balancer. And then we see that the load balancer, like this listens to port 80 and 443. So basically this service, right, and is listening to the traffic that comes from externally, right, this load balancer, and this load balancer will then forward the traffic to our application. So if we see your application, which is basically the HAPROXY container that runs. The HAPROXY container, the deployment is here, right, and you can see this is the image which they use. So basically this container would consume the traffic, like would consume the configuration from ingress.yaml, and would then forward the traffic to the right services. So let's set up the cluster. So I am using a cluster.yaml, like I'm using kops, but the process is same even if you're doing EKS. So I'll execute the command which is make create cluster, which is going to further, like this is make file, so which is very helpful because I create short commands. So when I say create cluster, it's going to execute these four commands to create the cluster. So I say make create cluster. If you see here, it has done with creating of the cluster. So we need to wait for around 10 minutes or so for the cluster to be up, and then we'll apply rest of the configurations, like we'll create the application, we'll add Ingress and Ingress controller also, and we'll see the application is working. So let's wait for 10 minutes. So our cluster is ready now, and if we look at some of the things that we have in the cluster, if we see the Route 53, the rules right now, there is nothing like foo and bar here, right? We have this jomo.click as the site, and like API.kops, this is like the API server, which is API servers of Kubernetes. And if we say foo.jomo.click/node app, like the app which we'll be creating, it doesn't exist right now, so we'll create it, right? So, and also if we say kubectl get all, so it says that only the Kubernetes service is running. So let's start with first deploying the foo application. So the foo deployment is created and the foo app service is created. And now let's deploy the second one, which is the foo bar, like the bars deployment. So this is created, and now let's create the Ingress controller, which is from HAPROXY. Again, link to all of this configuration would be available in the description below, and this is also available on the HAPROXY site. So they recommend that you install it using Helm, but I wanted to show the details to see like how exactly this works. That's why I want to show the configuration of the service as well as the deployment that runs within these configurations. When using Helm, you don't come to know all of these details. So important that you know these details, how exactly things work behind the scenes. So let's apply this. So now when we see the route 53, so it created like two more rules, which is foo.jomo.click and bar.jomo.click. And when we see the EC2 management, like for the load balancers, all the load balancers, so we had one load balancer previously, which was for the EPA server, and hopefully we should have one more corresponding to the service, to the Ingress service. And meanwhile, I can show you from where foo and bar was coming once again. So the Route 53 records are added based on this annotation, and the previous annotation tells that map the service using a AWS load balancer. So here we see two load balancers now, and when we click on them, so here is the new load balancer, which is, and you could also see it from the tags. From the tags it says Kubernetes service name, which is HAPROXY controller. This HAPROXY controller is the namespace, and the HAPROXY Ingress is the service name. So again, like the service name was HAPROXY Ingress, right? And the namespace was HAPROXY controller. And now we'll apply the ingress, which is this file, which maps the subdomains and all. So all our configuration is complete. So my application is up now. So if you just see foo.jomo.click now, so it says hello world, and this is the counter, and from this is the backend, which is like, which includes the pod name and all, and app is foo, right? So if I reload now, let me increase the size maybe, right? So it says hello world 2. Maybe let me reload once again. So again, like it's from app foo, right? And if I just say bar, which is bar.jomo.click, and I reload, so it's going to different backends now, right? If you see, so here it has incremented like one of the backends. Again, the app is bar here. So this is the second application which we deployed, right? So this is how easy it is to set up various domains and point to different applications and all using Ingress. And as we saw, like this was the example in which we use the hosts, but you could use different path names. So you could have like the same, which is like api.jomo.click, and you could say here foo, and here you could just say bar, right? So in that case, all the foo would go to the foo app service, all the bars would go to bar app service. So this is other way, using, instead of using host names and using path names, you could set up the routing and all. So how, like, this is how easy it is to set up a routing using Ingress, and you're not paying the cloud provider for all of this routing and all, because this is all configured within Kubernetes. So if you liked the full video, please click on the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments below, let me know how I can improve upon my videos, and also let me know the topics on which you would be interested in knowing more. Thank you.